Is that Shags joining? Shags, perfect timing, my friend. Interrupted my getting ready to say, welcome everybody to the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. We are an online Rotary club. We are focused on innovation, entrepreneurship, and education, and all of these things in the larger realm of service to others. And how do we just make the world a better place? And why would we be in an online club? Well, that could be because we have schedules that make being in a traditional Rotary club a challenge. It could be that you are someone like me who's just really interested in the possibility of how technology can serve the business of service, and the flexibility, the opportunity to work with people all around the world. That cool international component of Rotary is something that we just love. I want to introduce who is on the call with me. The person with the incredibly static facial expression is our president, Mitty Chang. He's not actually here, but I'm logged in as him so that we can record this. Mitty, we love you. And now waving at us in the bottom left, as I see it, is none other than Stephen Shags Shagrin. And if you don't know Shags, then you just don't have it together in life the way you should. Way it is. Shags is a great man, board member, paella master, and one of the least boring people I know. And the person our members may not immediately recognize, well, that would be our speaker. And our speaker is a friend of mine, a guy named Jeff Heil. And Jeff is an educator, works with the San Diego County Office of Education, adjunct professor at CSU San Marcos, and does all kinds of wonderful things in all kinds of great settings. He has a story to tell that when I heard at a recent conference, I thought, man, I want our Rotary Club members to hear that story, because I think it fits pretty well. You will hear him talk about a video that you've already seen. So earlier in this meeting, you will have seen the video of our snowboarder, and he will speak a little bit more to that. But with that, I would like to introduce one of my favorite human beings on the planet, Mr. Jeff Heil.
Thank you so much, sir. Let me share my screen here. And let's see if all's right in the universe. Are we all good? Rushton, thumbs up.
Looking good. Looking good.
All right. All right. I'm really excited to be with you all. Rushton is also one of my favorite people in the world. And so whenever he and I are together, we either travel, or we talk about travel, or we talk about education. And I think where we connect too is we see education as something so much greater than what happens in a schoolhouse. And so to have the opportunity to share a little bit of my story with you, I think is definitely an honor for me. And hopefully you'll see that service looks many different things. And what called me to service was something probably unique to me, but I think it would apply to anybody out there that has worked in a situation where work doesn't feel like work. I've been an educator for over 20 years, and not a day of it has felt like work, because it's what I love. So the title today, I called it as I did not choose my profession, it chose me. And my name is Jeffrey Heil, and I love to snowboard, so I always use that picture. I am at jheil65 on all social media. So if you use the Twitters, or if you are an Instagram person, that's another thing that I share with Rushton. We always go on photo walks whenever we're together and document those on Instagram. So if you like to look at pictures and that tell stories and connect on the social medias, I would absolutely love to connect with you. But I want to talk a little bit about my story. And as I mentioned, and as Rushton mentioned, I've been an educator for over 20 years, probably a little longer than that. And it all started in kind of a unique way. And so that's a little bit of what I want to share with you today. And hopefully you will find it as enthralling as I feel that my life is. So this might look familiar to some of you. It's MTV. And I love to show this because it sort of puts you in that mood. It puts you in that place. It puts you in that time. And so if you are anywhere on the spectrum that I am, who was born in the 60s, 1965 to be exact, you were a teenager approaching adulthood when MTV came out. So MTV came out in 1981, and I graduated high school in 1983 from Moon Valley High School, home of the Rockets in Phoenix, Arizona. And graduating in high school in 1983, I honestly had no idea what I was going to do. I had zero idea. And I think that goes back to my family and my family structure. These are my parents. That is Joe Heil, who is no longer with us. And that is Julie Heil. And in between is my youngest daughter, Lily, who is now 14. And my parents are, and my dad was, an amazing person, like incredibly loving, incredibly caring. But neither one of my parents graduated from high school. Not many, I would say probably. My dad's the youngest of 5. My mother is the youngest of 6. And no one in their direct family, and probably 1 or 2 people in all of our extended family, which is hundreds of people, have graduated from high school. So when I say I graduated, I mean, graduated college. So when I say I graduated from high school in 1983, not really knowing what to do, it's because education was not something that our family looked at as the next step after high school. So I actually started working in a metal and magnesium and aluminum foundry. But I got tired of that very quickly after a hot summer in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I did something that I thought would make my parents very, very proud. I joined the Air Force. I joined the U.S. Air Force February 1st of 1984. And I spent 4 years in Spokane, Washington. And my job when I was in the Air Force, believe it or not, was teacher. So I've always been a fairly decent communicator, and I've always wanted to share with others. And so I worked with a unit called the Aerospace Physiology Unit. And we worked with altitude chambers and dive chambers. If you've ever seen Officer and a Gentleman, you might remember the patty cake thing. That's the kind of thing that I did, and worked with the hyperbaric medicine chamber. So I spent 4 years in the Air Force, and I remember my parents being so proud. But my 4 years were up, and I got out of the service, and I went back to Arizona. And my parents were a little bit disappointed in me because they saw that as like my whole career. But when I got back to Arizona, I started working for the Hyatt Hotel Corporation, specifically the Hyatt Regency in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I'm in my mid-20s. I'm working at the Hyatt as a bartender. And then I drove out to San Diego. My friend and I drove up the coast following none other than Elvis Costello. And I loved San Diego. I said, I could do that. I could move there. And so I moved out to open up the hotel that you're seeing here, the Hyatt Regency La Jolla. And in opening that hotel, I settled in to San Diego and started working there as a bartender and did a little bit of traveling. But something happened while I was working at the Hyatt. I remember having a conversation with my mother about my nephew who had just dropped out of school. And he was, I think, 15 years old. And I remember thinking, Mom, I don't understand. Why are you allowing Jeremy to drop out of high school? And this is what she told me. She said, son, we just ain't school people. And the sad fact is that she believed that, and that many people in the world believe that there are school people and not school people. And there was just something about that, something about, I guess, my life at the time that made me think that's not okay. I don't believe that. I don't believe that anybody's really not a school person. I think some people aren't successful in schools, and oftentimes that's the school's fault, but I don't believe that there are just people that are school people and not. And so I enrolled in San Diego City College at the age of 28. And I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to get an education. So I started San Diego City College, finished my 2 years there, and then I transferred to UCSD. And as someone that was approaching the age of 30, of course, I needed to pick a practical major, so I majored in philosophy. And I remember my friends laughing at me and saying, you're so stupid. What are you going to do with the philosophy degree? And I honestly said, I have no idea, but I'm going to have a college education. And I'm going to prove to my mother that our family and others indeed are school people. And so right after graduating from college, I was working in a restaurant at the time, and my now wife of 21 years and I lived in that building that you see here. It was downtown San Diego, called 600 Front Street. And right across from us, every day when we would leave the parking garage, we would see this building. And it says Tucson Teen Center in there, but that's text that I put there. There was absolutely no signage on this building. It looked like an abandoned warehouse. But I would see these kids outside. And it took me about a month to get the courage. And I finally walked over there one day, and I see this very large man in a uniform standing in front of the door. And I said to him, I said, "Sir, why are you locking these kids in this building?" And he laughed at me and he said, "I'm a security guard. This is a homeless shelter." And that's when I knew what I wanted to do. That's exactly the point in time that I found my purpose. And I said, "Can I come inside?" And so I walked in and toured the place, and I met the teacher, and I said, "I want to work here." And he said, "Well, I kind of work here." I said, "I don't care. I want to work here. What do I have to do?" And he sends me to the principal, and I talked to the principal. The principal says, "Well, somebody else works there." I said, "Well, I want to work there. What do I have to do?" And he said, "Do you have a teaching credential?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, you kind of need one." So I started right away, started a credential program at National University, and got my teaching credential. And about a month into the teaching credential, I went back to that same principal with my 30-day certificate, and I said, "I can sub for you. I want to go back to that school." And he said, "The teacher's still at that school, but I can let you sub in the system." So I subbed in the system for like 3 months. And then I get a phone call from him, and he said, "You're not going to believe this. The teacher left the school. I'm sending you to the Tucson Teen Center." I couldn't believe it. And it was a program. The shelter was run by Father Joe, which is a part of Father Joe Villages in San Diego. And it was their first attempt to run a teen shelter, had 30 beds. And so Father Joe ran the school, and the San Diego County Office of Education, we contracted out to do the school. And it was a one-room schoolhouse. This was my partner, Melanie Tolan, and she and I did the entire high school curriculum for 30 plus kids, ages 13, 14, all the way through 18, 19. And we honestly didn't know exactly what we were doing, but we knew we loved those kids, and we knew that we needed to raise expectations for those kids, that it wouldn't be right if we just let them, go about their day and sent them on their way. There was something about us and something that clicked that we just said, it's not okay. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to see that you are successful. And we're going to prepare you as if you're going to college. You may choose not to, but we're going to prepare you as if you go to college. But for us, it was so much more than academics, because every grading period we would redo our class expectations, and it was always optional what we did, but how we created the rules. But this one wasn't optional. Be sincere. And our goal was that you are going to be sincere in all of your communication, in all of the work you do, in your interactions with staff, in your interactions with parents if you talk to them. And it required a bit of a social contract, because we said we're going to do everything we can do to hold you to your most sincere level, but you have to trust us. And so that's how we built trust with them. And we continued to push them and get to know them and try to push them to whatever the best version of them was. And we just didn't know any better to think that it wasn't possible. And so that's how we did school for 8 years. And again, like I said, we didn't really know what we were doing. It was a small school. Whenever anybody was finished with their curriculum, we stopped everything and we had graduations. We didn't know what to do for art. So we took down all of the ceiling tiles. And as you can see, there's a couple examples. Kids just started painting them after famous paintings. And then we put them back up in the ceiling. So every single ceiling tile was a different piece of artwork. But we continued to push them, and we continued to see them succeed and succeed and succeed. And when I got to the Teen Center, I believed in social justice, and I believed in doing everything I could to see the inequity in the world. But as you can see by this quote in Martin Luther King, one of the things that I became most passionate about was what I would call the problem of mistaking effects for causes. And what that means is, like, there are people in the world. I was having a conversation with students today about the Little Rock Nine. And I always ask teachers, and I've taught at Cal State San Marcos for the last 10 years working with educators. And I always ask teachers, are you familiar with the Little Rock Nine? And they say, yes, of course, we're familiar. And I always then ask, what happened the year after they segregated Little Rock High School? And no one has ever been able to answer me. The governor of Arkansas closed every public high school in the state of Arkansas so that he didn't have to admit Black kids. And then Virginia followed suit. And the reason I say mistaking cause and effect, because I often hear people say, we can't, Black History Month or history from an African-American perspective, it divides our kids, it divides students, it causes problems. And I would say that's actually an effect of a system that didn't give you the whole truth. So when they find out, they are angry. And so it became my goal to like really get them to go beyond calling effects causes and trying to get them to see why these kids might be in the situation that they're at and understand that a system that allows that to happen, we need to fight against. And so when we got there, we had like one computer. And again, we just knew we loved these kids. We didn't know what to do. And I got some money and I talked to Melanie into letting us invest all of our $10,000. They gave us our Title I funds. And we bought these iBooks. Those might look familiar to some of you. We bought 3 in Bondi Blue and 2 in Tangerine Orange. And we got an airport, which put them online. And we didn't really know what we wanted to do with these until we got one of these. We got this camera. And that's when it started to transform things for us. And you may or may not hear this, and that's okay. We had no idea what we were doing with the camera. So we did what every teacher does. We remade every single Grammar Rock video. And so this was the example that we gave the students, and then they went and remade every video. And I'm going to stop that before I start to sing. And again, like I said, it was that love for the kids. It was that feeling of purpose that just kept us pushing forward. But there was something about the introduction of the technology and to see the power of story and to see what these kids could do when you put the technology in their hands that allowed them to tell their stories in ways that they've never been able to tell before. And so we spent a whole lot of time allowing them to tell their stories, because if they don't tell their stories, there are many people that would be willing to tell their stories, and they wouldn't be accurate stories. And so we started entering videos in contests. So we did a little video called Runaway, submitted it to the Innovative Videos in Education Award, and we won the Grand Recognition Award prize. And then we kept making films, and the kids kept winning awards. And the empowerment that they got from that was it was transformative. And the greatest day in my teaching career was the day that we were shocked to win the Grand Recognition Award and to see the look on those kids' faces. And what came with that was a trip to Stanford University to do the Digital Media Academy for a week. And so we had to get Father Joe to agree to send all 4 kids because they only won 1 scholarship. But that whole experience transformed their lives. And it was around that time, that approximately 10 years into this, that I had applied to Cal State San Marcos as a distinguished teacher in residence. And so I was accepted to go to Cal State. But I went there with the thought that I've been spending the last 10 years trying to work with 30 kids a day to try to get them to see the world differently, to try to get them believe that all kids can learn. And I realized that when I got to Cal State, that what I could do there was work with 50 teachers a day, 100 teachers a semester, and have them work with 30 to 50 kids a day and really see how they could transform it. And it was then that I realized the true value of empathy and the true value of the service in the calling and the power of relationships. And so you saw the video of Ryan, and he's the closest thing that I have to a son. He still comes and stays with us in the summer. I talk to him all the time, and he was able to believe in himself. He didn't take the education path, but he believed in himself. And there were a couple other girls. If I had more time, I would love to tell you all the stories, but LaShanae Johnson and Trisha McElroy, the 2 girls that you see there on the left, both graduated from college. Both did a semester or a intersession abroad in India. LaShanae, the girl on the far left where I'm wearing the goofy hat, she was awarded the Fulbright Fellowship. She went and taught school in India for a year. Trisha, while her family was still suffering from the impacts of homelessness, she graduated from college and got a commission in the U.S. Army. And so it allowed us, I'm going to pause right here. It allowed us to, and allowed me to fulfill my purpose through education. But I think the purpose for me, like I said, and this is things that Russian and I have talked about, goes so far beyond education. It's about that desire to make the world a better place. And I'm a father of two wonderful teenage girls, and I've been married for 21 years. And I honestly believe that I'm a better teacher than I am a father, and then I am a husband. And I can't explain that. Maybe if you're an educator, you get that, but that's how much of a calling it feels like to me. So I've rambled. That's my story, Rushton. I know I went a couple minutes long, but you know me. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Nicely done, sir. Excellent. Jeff, wonderful story. And I'm ready to leap in with a number of things for our little Q&A period. I'm jazzed that Shags is here as well. Shags, if there is something you'd like to kind of leap in with, a comment or a question just to get us going, then that's cool.
No, it's just great I teach as well, but I teach adults different processes as a coach. And you're right. There's just something amazing to making that connection, to helping people to step into their highest power. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the pieces about this, right, is that the moment at which you figured out where your path was. I mean, it's that moment you cross the street and you talk to the guy about locking the kids in the in the building and that kind of thing. You don't know. I mean, people just don't know when they will come face to face with something that totally captures their attention, that kind of gets them in that space where they're like, oh, wait, tell me more. I want to know more. Let me inside. I got to know. I want to do this. That moment is a heck of a moment. And I think a lot of people either feel like they haven't experienced that moment, or they did, but somehow other things immediately caught their attention, or they thought, I can't do it, I won't be able to, or anything like that. So, if we're talking about identifying the moment, right, are there things about that for people, whether they're, just out of college, or they're, 40 years into figuring out what they want to do, or whatever it might be? Are there things about that moment that represent advice you have for others?
Well, I think one of the things you said was very prescient in the idea that, are people not seeing that moment, or are they not recognizing it as the moment when it arrives? And, a lot of that has to do with I think, how we feel about ourselves. And I think if at the age of 30 to get a philosophy degree to others seemed like a really silly thing to do, but there was something about the pursuit of that and the complete immersion into something that was challenging to me, but rewarding to me, and to just believe that this was the right thing to do. So I think if people could, I think there's a sense in which we all know ourselves to a certain degree. And I think if we could, sort of open yourselves up to your own self, so that when you are experiencing the world, you're seeing it in a different way. And so it's something that I've talked about. Like, if your core beliefs drive the way that you operate on a daily basis, the definition, my favorite definition of core belief is, it drives the way you see yourself, it drives the way you see others, and it drives the way you see the future. So if your core beliefs are that service is what it's about, for me, it was always, I haven't been very religious in my life, but I've always believed that you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I've always believed that in some sense, and I didn't always live that, but I think the juxtaposition of deciding, after 10 years of high school, and just getting that nudge from my mother, which she doesn't even know she did that, to get me to go to college. And that opened me up for the possibility of working at the teen center. And I know that's a long answer, but I think any of us in our lives could probably relate to that, whatever their story is. And if I didn't have that college degree, it wouldn't have been so easy to get the teaching credential. So I just had to believe that moving forward was the right thing.
No, that makes sense to me. And especially because you pursued what you felt you needed to pursue. You know, essentially you were in the right frame of mind based on understanding what fascinates you to be ready when something came along that you knew you could dedicate yourself to. I mean, I think I was in my first few days in Japan in the fall of 1987, you know, because I was over there to just as a semester study abroad. And I didn't go over there to study the language. I mean, I knew I would because everybody did on the program. I went over there to, you know, study history and some other things and stuff that I genuinely love. But when we started studying the language, you know, it just kind of knocked me over like, oh my God, this is cool. This is amazingly cool. You know, and it has continued to be interesting for me even after I stopped being a Japanese language teacher. It still holds that kind of fascination for me. And there's a story that Sir Ken Robinson tells in one of his talks, and he talks about Death Valley, and he shows a picture of Death Valley, right? And you know, Death Valley is not particularly vibrant. Let's say, you know, there's a whole lot of sand going on, you know, and there was this time at some point, you know, 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was, when there was this kind of freak weather, and it got a bunch of rain. So like boom, ton of rain on Death Valley, and then soon after, the place erupts in flowers. So you know, it's this incredible, you know, kind of ocean of flowers in this place that everyone thinks is dead. And the point, of course, is that we're that close often to something amazing, but everybody might be telling us, no, you know, that's not you, you know, you can't do that, you know, that's dead territory. There are no flowers there, you know, stuff like that. And when we think about these kids, you know, who end up in the alternative programs and, you know, and the kind of programs that you know you've seen a lot of time in a lot of ways. It's not quite the program, you know, you were in at you know, Tucson, but a lot of those kids, people have written them off. No, you know, no flowers there. And when I think that we think about others that way, and we think about ourselves that way, you know, kind of that sense of I don't have it in me to do X or Y or Z. That close, right? Just a little bit.
And it's funny you say that, because in all the conversations I would have with them about, you know, that whole passion of wanting to make sure people believe they were school people, is that the barrier or the distance between success and failure is paper thin.
Yeah.
Is paper thin. And I think some students with, you know, they'll self-oppress, and their own self-doubt and disbelief will make that feel like it's 12 inches of solid lead. You know, and it was like, we used to talk about behavior, and I would draw a line on the board, and I would say, this is the minimum behavior that's going to keep you out of trouble. And so if that's all you do, when you make a mistake, you're going to fall below the line. However, if this is the minimum line and you can keep yourself somehow above the line, then when you make a mistake, when you trip up, you're not going to fall below the line. And then you're going to, you know what I mean? And it's for them, it's getting them to change that belief in themselves, getting them to change that behavior. And as we, you know, Dweck's work on mindsets, and I had no idea it existed back then. But, you know, the idea that I couldn't change their mindsets. I couldn't change their self-belief, but I could put them in a situation where when they experienced success, when they started to believe in themselves, they could change their own mindset, and they could change their own belief about themselves. And that's all it takes. It's that same paper thin difference between success and failure, between repeating, for many of my students, unfortunately, repeating the mistakes of their parents. And what I have seen in such large numbers, which makes me so happy, is that so many of these kids that I continue to stay in contact with may not be the perfect models of what we would think success is, but they're not repeating their parents' mistakes. They are moving forward. They are having families. They're having jobs. They're graduating from school in numbers that I think, if I could truly calibrate it, are amazing and would be so far above what people would think they could do.
Yeah. Shags actually tossed a gem into the chat a minute ago about we all thrive, and let me let him kind of pipe in and say that as say what he was adding a minute ago. Demute yourself there, Shags, and share that thought.
What, that we all bloom under different conditions?
Yeah.
So when somebody thinks of something as a failure, just say it's not a failure. That's a success at discovering something that wasn't right, didn't work, or needed a different path.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and
what I do, I'm sorry, is what I do as a money coach is to help people understand that it's really hard to move financially, socially, and educationally away from your family of origin, because it's a crab bucket syndrome where they tend to pull you back, or you feel as if once you get away, am I still worthy of that love? And just to know that it's okay, because somebody has to make the shift to let everyone else feel empowered to say, we can do that as well.
Every time
Absolutely.
that we've been in a group where like our club gets together for a shindig or something like that, and get a chance to talk to Shags about that kind of philosophy, he drops those kinds of gems. I mean, it's totally good stuff. And one of the moments in your slides, by the way, Jeff, that really stood out for me was seeing the paintings that went for the ceiling tiles. That was not random art there. I mean, they did a really good job.
They were amazing.
And those, like what that is, that's concrete evidence of their capabilities, right? Every time they walk in the room and look up, I'm capable of being successful. This thing might be kicking my posterior at the moment, but I know what I can do. And every time we use tools and activities that produce something, not just an abstract grade, but something that allows them to say, yeah, there is that. And we can always remind them, you did that.
Yeah. And no one can take it away from you.
Right.
I mean, they can physically take it away, but they can't take away the intent behind it. And that's one of the things that the arts did for our kids, is the filmmaking, the art. We used to do we did yoga, we did capoeira, the things that were sort of quote unquote non-academic were the things that kept many of them in school. When I started there, we had an average stay in the teen center of about, I think it was 45 days. And when Mel and I left there, it was over a year.
Wow. And accompanying educational successes from the longer term stability of being able to do that as well.
Yeah. And also when I left there, I told you I started with one computer. We had more computers than kids.
As long as they're being used well, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Speaking of long term, by the way, I'm in danger of making this a long term recording. So I should wind things down, but what I'll do is I'll do a few logistical pieces and then hand it back to you for some final thoughts.
All right.
To all of you cool people who have joined us this week for our program. Every week, our goal is to inspire ideas for how to make the world a better place, how to see new possibilities in yourself, how to remember that there are all kinds of good, in the face of all kinds of news to the contrary, that there are all kinds of good people out there doing great things for others. And that's what Rotary is about. It's what our online club is about. The flexibility of being able to find that at any time, from anywhere. You mean I could do my meeting at 2 a.m.? You certainly could. On Sunday, you could. Wow, that's great. Thank you very much. So that's part of our goal, is to be able to share those kinds of things with the world. So to finish off the program tonight, I'll hand it back to Jeff for a final thought, and let's have that. Jeff, finish us off.
I would love to. And I think this is a perfect ending to the discussion we had. And thanks so much for adding to our discussion. But I was challenged with this question when I went to the Google's first ever Moonshot Summit in Amsterdam, and it was the idea of what if. We were talking about global education in a global society, but what if could be anything. Think about you, think about your life situation, think about what you want to see the future. And I think so often people get so stuck in what is that they never even allow them the luxury of imagining what if.
Mhm.
And so when I was asked that question, and I think we hear that more frequently than not nowadays, it's, well, what if it didn't have to be that way? What if the meeting could be online? What if that's part of what you did, Rushton. And so for me, it was very, very simple. I think it was based on my belief in social justice and my belief in kids and my belief in story once I heard their stories. So my what if is, what if every child believed she had the power to change the world? What would that take? What if every child believed she had the power to change the world? And so I think the challenge for all of you is to answer your own what if, and let that be one of the core beliefs that drives you on a daily basis. Because remember, if whatever your what if becomes one of your core values, it will change the way you see yourself. It will change the way you see others, and it will change the way you see the future. So very simple, when you leave the meeting, whether it's at 3 a.m. or at 3 p.m, hopefully you'll have an answer to your what if. And thank you so much for letting me clog up your airwaves.
Thank you, Bud. As you finish, you who are watching this recording, make sure to tell us you were here. Fill out the attendance survey below. It'll only take a few seconds. We love to know that folks joined us. And leave a comment. By all means, leave a comment. Maybe tell us what if should be. And with that, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.